So I've gone ahead and I've got set up over here, and on a Mac you can use these tiling things. The Windows Installfest, and we're just going to walk through this to make sure that everything is set up. So I apologize, and in fact, Connor, would you be able to do a little screen sharing? And well, let's start with the terminal and PowerShell. Connor, would you actually mind screen sharing and maybe just demo opening up PowerShell for us?
Yeah, sure. Could you guide me on how to do that? I'm not used to Zoom.
Go for it. That's totally fine. So down at the bottom of Zoom, and this is actually good for everyone because we'll all be doing lots of screen sharing. Um, Along the commands, there's one that's sort of like a rectangle with an arrow in it near the center. It says share screen.
Just click that and that's it.
Click that. It'll pop up this sort of window where you choose what you want to show and just show the entire screen for whichever screen if you have multiple monitors. Yep. Beautiful. I love it. And just go ahead and let's just hit the start menu or type in the search bar and type PowerShell, and let's open up PowerShell.
Oh yeah. I always forget.
Awesome. So this is like the terminal for Windows, like we were seeing. This lets you use a terminal program to interact with your file system, like Francisco was walking us through in the computer. However, the commands are somewhat different because Windows is not a Linux-based OS. So many of these commands, like I think CD is the same and make directory is the same, but some of them will be different. And because we have a lot of command line based stuff, we want everything to be the same, and sort of the standard in the software engineering world is Linux. So you should never be using PowerShell, and you should never be in the actual Windows command line. And one way you can tell is if you look at the command prompt here, which is the thing to the left of the blinking cursor, where you see sort of the directory path, and it starts with the directory name C:/. That's how you can tell that you are in the Windows operating system and the Windows file system, because Linux is not organized that way, right? It doesn't have a C directory or a D directory, and it's shown a bit differently. So we are actually going to go ahead and use Visual Studio Code. And I believe we should have most of this set up. And Connor, if you have, yeah, go ahead and do that.
Code for what directory?
Just hit enter. Doesn't matter. It should open it up. So there's a bunch of different ways to open Visual Studio Code. That's a good way right there. Let's see what that says. You're using the user scope installation of Visual Studio Code as a manager. That is, yeah.
I think
We will set it up so that when you open VS Code, you are using it connected to WSL2. Um, so VS Code, I think we'll talk about more later. I want to make sure everyone is set up to go with WSL2, because that's the big thing, and then we'll kind of tackle everything else. Let me get a quick show of hands. Who here knows for sure I have installed WSL2 on my Windows machine? Okay, so a couple folks, not everyone. That's totally okay. That's what we're here for. And can someone who has installed it tell me, like, what is WSL2? Let's start there.
So from what I understand, WSL, Windows Subsystem for Linux, it's not I wouldn't say it's a virtual machine inside of Windows, but it's like a actual Linux box within Windows that lets you run like Linux from within Windows. Pretty self-explanatory, I would say.
Yes, I think that was pretty good. And in fact, what I would add to it is, so there are two versions of WSL. The Windows, what does it stand for? Windows Subsystem for Linux. The old version WSL1 and the new one WSL2. WSL2 is in fact a full-on virtual machine. And I'm going to steal the screen for a moment, and I'll just make a quick diagram in here to very briefly explain sort of the idea of what a virtual machine is. So I've got my computer, and then inside that, let's say I've got Windows, right? The Windows OS. And inside that, we are running a program called a virtual machine.
Sorry, I
And
think we're still looking at Connor's screen.
Yeah. So I have to stop
Con-
first.
yeah,
Yeah, I
there's a
think,
way to switch back and
you can-
forth.
Yeah, at the
Connor,
top of the screen, you can switch.
yeah, thank you for letting me know. Connor, would you just unshare, and then that'll make life simpler.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and folks, thank you so much for letting me know, because I totally had forgotten about that. Can everyone see my screen right now?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yes.
So WSL2 is the name of this virtual machine, that software that's been created by Microsoft. And what a virtual machine does is it completely simulates some other computer down to the hardware level. And for those of you who play games, if you've ever played like a Super Nintendo ROM, or like Erica, you were mentioning an emulator, you know, it's to play like a PlayStation or a Super Nintendo game on your computer, it's using a virtual machine program, so that the program for the game itself doesn't know it's running on a computer. It thinks it's running on a console. So WSL2 maybe does some extra stuff because it's made by Microsoft for this one specific purpose. But for all intents and purposes, what this then lets us do is, inside this virtual machine, inside WSL2, we are running a completely different operating system, Linux, that has a completely different file system. And I'm not going to get in too much into the details, because there's some overlaps between the file systems here and stuff. But the important thing to know is, here inside like my Linux virtual machine, I might make, you know, let's call it like a homework directory, right? Well, this homework directory, it, for all intents and purposes, does not exist outside the virtual machine. Like if I'm in Windows, you know, and if I'm over here in Windows, in the Windows file system, and I'm trying to find the homework directory, my homework directory, it's not going to be there. So the easiest thing to do is, we're just going to set it up right now so that you all are always working inside WSL2, and you're always opening a terminal in WSL2, and that VS Code is always connected to WSL2, and all the files and stuff you save will be here. Now, there's some stuff that happens under the hood, so that like you can open up Chrome and have certain things that need to interact between, say, the virtual machine and the rest of Windows, but that's stuff that we don't really need to worry about. And the advantage of this is, then you're essentially working in a Linux machine, and all the command line commands are exactly the same as Mac, because Mac is Linux based, and we can have the same commands and stuff for everyone. So installing WSL2, Connor, you can correct me, but in essence, you need to open up PowerShell and run this command, WSL space -- install. Does that sound right?
Yes, and there is some considerations for that. So on my laptop, it worked perfectly fine for some reason. But then whenever I tried to do it on my desktop, I had to specify a version with another flag. I think it was like -D or whatever. It was like another distribution of Linux.
Or the version of the distribution of Linux that we need to install?
Yeah, so for some people, it might be like that. And also, if you have a Windows Store like messed up, you can't install it for some reason.
Got it. Yeah. So those things, folks, if I would just try this command now, if it doesn't work, those pieces, I think you may have to catch up on later. I do want to find, was the is it just WSL install space dash D and then like Ubuntu is the distribution name?
Yeah, yeah. If the easiest way is just do the base command like you said, and then if it doesn't work, Windows will tell you, and then it'll give you a very long detailed list with more options for the flag, and then you
Got
just
it.
follow the options.
Yes, and by default, often I think WSL2 will try to install Ubuntu. So if you don't have WSL2 installed, open up PowerShell now, please, and run this command WSL space dash dash install. And for reference, this markdown doc that I'm going off of is in our curriculum repo. If you go to, we have sort of different modules, and there are also links down here. And you can just see the lessons go like day 1, day 2, day 3. And so we're on day 1. And it is hiding a bit in here because it's actually in the file. It's under page resources, and we should probably put it somewhere else. But you want Installfest Windows.
Are you still
I'll
sharing your
show the link here
screen?
as well.
Or did you think we were looking at your screen when you were scrolling?
Can anyone see
Or-
my screen right now?
Nope.
I just see you talking.
Oh, folks, I'm so
You were
sorry.
inferring, that's why I asked the question, because it sounded
Yeah.
like you were.
I'm so sorry. When did we get lost with the screen share? Did you guys see this diagram?
Yes.
Okay. Got it. I'm so sorry about that. I missed that we lost that. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah, so here in the curriculum repo, I was just showing we have the different modules. You can go by directory name. We're starting on one over here. We're on the first lesson, and I would just, if you go in here inside the page resources directory, here is the Windows Installfest instructions. Okay. So please do open up PowerShell, run this WSL space dash dash install command now. Please do me a favor, and if you have WSL2 already installed, give me a thumbs up and let me know when. Can I see again who doesn't? Awesome. Garrett, Erica, you have WSL2 installed, right?
Yes.
Awesome. Brandon, do you have WSL2 installed?
Yes.
Awesome. Gary, how about yourself?
I just installed it. It's telling me won't be effective until the system is rebooted.
Okay, go ahead and reboot and just rejoin us in the Zoom.
Okay.
Thank you.
See it in a few.
Awesome. Joseph, how about yourself?
Yes, I downloaded it. I did the Installfest during FOP.
Awesome. Thank you, man. Len, I'm guessing, are you set up as well?
Yeah, I just have a Linux box. I don't have WSL. I had it before on my other
Got it.
box, but yeah.
Nice. Perfect. Mikhail, how about yourself, man?
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. And Mickey?
Yeah, I've got it set up. I had it,
Cool.
got it set up earlier.
Cool. Garrett, yourself? Oh, I asked you already. Sorry. Dustin.
Yes, I have, doing
Oh,
the
yeah.
dual
Of
boot
course.
Ubuntu, yeah.
We were just chatting. The connection between the fact that I was just chatting to you as a human in the classroom and on Zoom.
It's hard because my video's not working. You can't see my face on there.
All good, man. And when, how about yourself? Do you have WSL2 installed or are you installing it?
I'm good. Thank you.
You do have it installed?
Yes, yes.
Awesome. Thank you
Thank
very much. Okay. All right. I think we're just gonna wait a moment for Gary. I know it's a bit of a pause, but really the goal of Installfest is to get everyone to the same spot at the end of the day. So I appreciate you all for being patient. I don't want to go too far ahead into like the terminal setup stuff until Gary's back, and he should be here in just a couple minutes. While we're waiting, do folks have any questions about stuff that we've covered or maybe other things that are on your minds?
Yeah, can I actually show you something? I want to share screen, and I had a question about Weasel and Ubuntu.
Yeah, go for it.
So It happened to me like last week where I went to so I opened up VS Code through the terminal. So I open up uh and everything, and um I'll come into here and I'll be in this environment or this profile here, and this opens fine. I know I'm connected to Weasel and Ubuntu,
Yep.
but then there's sometimes where I'll open up VS Code and it'll open up to this one here, and it won't, this one won't open. It'll just sit here doing this. And I'm not sure what the difference is or why I have, are these different profiles, or I'm not really sure what this is and why one won't open and one will.
I am honestly not sure either. It looks like the link, so is the link that you clicked on, can you do me a favor, close this one out? Thank you. Make the other one full screen, so it's a bit bigger and easier for me to see. Show me again the thing that you clicked on, but don't click on it yet, so I can take a look at it.
You mean when I click here and then new window?
Yeah, so, and then did you click on something else in here again?
Yeah, so the large screen one back here is this Joseph L17.
Okay,
And the one I clicked on was this one that doesn't open.
okay, so if I look at that, what I see is that is opening a specific directory, I think, which is
Mhm.
also VS Code, we'll call those a workspace, where you see on the right, go ahead and make this full screen so we can look at this better. Thank you. So
Mhm.
under recent, there's stuff on the left and there's stuff on the right, right? And the blue stuff on the left, it looks like, what is it, the username, and if we're in Ubuntu or not. The stuff on the right looks like the particular directory that we're telling VS Code to open in. Because when I open VS Code in a particular directory, it'll set up that file explorer in the sidebar there. It'll by default open the VS Code terminal in that directory. And the top one on the right, the path is mount/c. That looks like something Windowsy, and then slash users, which is maybe all the Linux users. I'm honestly not really sure. The list of all users, that looks like a file path that is not inside Linux. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I guess I would ask, why would we want to open VS Code in that directory as opposed to, say, the /home directory for your Ubuntu user in Linux? And if we click on that second one, let's see if it opens up for us or if we get the same spinny taking forever thing. So I think this is
it
fine.
was
Yeah,
okay. I
yeah,
was just asking because I was using I think I was using um this this one here for most of FOP, and then in like the last week or two of FOP, it just stopped working. And when I would open up the terminal, I would just get a blank screen, and this wouldn't be here at all. So I
I
had to
can't, it's a
delete
little
everything.
hard for me to help debug something I can't see. I
Yeah.
think for this specific thing that you shared, it
Mhm.
opening up VS Code in that /mount/c/users directory. I don't know why it's hanging. It looks like that's probably a Windows directory, so we probably don't want to do that at all.
Okay.
What I strongly recommend and what we're going to set up today is like one way to open up VS Code all the time,
Mhm.
probably to your Linux users home directory. We're going to set up the VS Code terminal to always be in there. And then if you need to open up another directory or stuff, you can just do it all from there so that you stay within the Linux environment.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Great question. I'm sorry I don't exactly have the answer, but hopefully that moves the ball forward.
It does. Thank you.
Yep. Gary, good to see you again, man.
What I recommend to avoid any like errors like that, what I always do is after like cloning the repo for the assignment or whatever, I CD to all of the things where I have all my assignments listed at, and then I do code and it directly open that directory
Yeah.
from the terminal. That's the most reliable way to do it.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. And actually, Connor, if you don't mind screen sharing, let's have you demo a little bit of that as well.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you.
Share Screen. All right, so this was just for the
Yeah.
on that.
And
I
if you don't
really-
mind, yeah, let's close up PowerShell and show folks your whole flow. Like show people how you open VS Code, and let's see what VS Code looks like when you open it.
All right. There's some stuff in the way. Is there a way to like move crap out of the way?
I would just close it out or hit the minimize.
There we go. Perfect. All right. So let's say I want to do an assignment. Actually,
I would say let's actually start from the basics. Can you close out this terminal entirely?
oh, sure.
Yeah, and let's just show me how you would open up like a new VS Code if you were going to start a whole new project from scratch and have it be in your WSL2 environment.
So as a part of the Installfest, I don't think I'm in the same directory anymore, but a later step is we install terminal app and then we put Ubuntu on there and then set this as the default through the settings, which I'm sure we'll have a tutorial for how to do that later. But starting from scratch, I'll just open this terminal and I'm going to put it down here like this so I can see it better. And then I navigate to where all my Code Platoon assignments are.
And is this terminal the VS Code terminal or a separate terminal program? Or remind me what program this terminal program is?
Yeah, so this is the terminal that was recommended in Installfest. If I can find it, let me get there.
Yeah, I
Page
apologize. I may
resources,
have missed it.
Installfest. Is it terminal? There was a recommendation for installing the terminal application. There's an application in the Microsoft Store. So you go to Microsoft Store and then like, if it works, if it gets past this loading screen, you can download terminal. Okay. Yeah, see Windows terminal.
Oh, I
Yeah.
apologize. It totally was there and it was totally hiding from me.
Mhm.
We mentioned in the first sentence. Yeah, folks, let's do this. If you haven't done this, this is great. And Connor, please do continue demoing this. So you open up the Microsoft Store, search for Windows Terminal, and install it. And then once you've installed it, did you have to do any configuration step to make sure it always opens inside Ubuntu and WSL2?
Yes, I did. So I don't remember exactly what I did. I had to chat GPT this one.
Settings, yep.
I think it was like up here near the top. Let me see. Default profile. Yep, default profile, and then you select it to be Ubuntu.
Yep.
Because there's a bunch of different
Yep.
terminal options you could use. And then you can customize it a little bit more. I'm trying to remember exactly what I did, because I know for sure I did this.
That's the critical step right there. And that's very similar to how we're going to do this in VS Code as well.
There might have been more stuff I did, but that was the primary thing, essentially. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, I set up the colors right here. I set that up, but that's optional.
Yeah. So
Mine, I know his only says Ubuntu. Mine has Ubuntu 20.04.
Yeah, that's
if there's only one Ubuntu there, it shouldn't matter the specific version of the Ubuntu. It's a good. Does that track, Connor?
yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty sure. That's a good question. Yeah, we do mention this. It's just in like a paragraph under terminal, under part 1 of Installfest. I just kept missing it. Connor, if you don't mind demoing one more time with the terminal program, just how you select the default profile.
Yeah, so
folks-
there's
yeah,
there's this I think it's this. Yeah. Then you go to settings, and then it's gonna be near the top. It was really hard for me to find it the first time, but it's near the top. It'll be like startup, default profile, then you select Ubuntu. It should be listed.
Awesome. This is super important because once you have this set up, then you will always open the terminal and always be running in the Ubuntu in your WSL2. And I cannot tell you how many hours I've seen students lose because it's so easy to open up a terminal and not realize that it's like PowerShell or it's in the Windows file system. and all sorts of confusion gets caused that way.
So what was the difference between those two Ubuntu? When you were setting up, you were selecting the default profile and there were two different Ubuntus. One had a penguin icon and one had a different icon. What's the difference between those two?
I'm not sure.
That is
I'm
good
sure.
questions. I'm actually not certain.
Oh yeah, the other thing I set up was the bash RC, and then there's also another one. It was the one of the profiles for the default command. It wasn't the bash RC.
Yeah,
Might be the bash profile, I think.
the bash RC, yeah, the bash, all the bash profile stuff, I think we'll get to later. I think just sticking with the profile thing. You
Yeah.
know, I am great question. About does it matter with the two Ubuntus? I actually just Googled it, and I think the first or second Stack Overflow post. The first is a profile created by the company that created Ubuntu specifically for Ubuntu. The second is auto-generated. So it's marginally better to choose the first one. I don't think it will make a difference, but I would say just choose the first one. And is that the one that you have, Connor, as well?
You meant the one with the
The
logo.
penguin. Yeah,
I was using the other one.
got it. Even better. I don't think it'll make a difference. I guess if we want to be extra safe, we can choose the second one that has the same thing that Connor has. According to a quick internet search, they should both essentially be the same thing.
I don't have that one.
I think I think that's okay, to be honest. I think as long as there's one Ubuntu, then you're good to go. Mickey, yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just looking at it. I opened up my PowerShell and it's set for the default profile is Ubuntu, but every time I open it up, it just opens to the Windows PowerShell with the little
So this program
blue
is not
icon.
PowerShell. This program is Windows Terminal.
Yeah, that would explain some difference. Yeah.
Yeah, so I know it is genuinely confusing, which is why I apologize if I'm being a little repetitive. I just want to make sure we get it all set up.
All right. So this is a perfect example of the workflow that I would use for once you get everything set up, how to like start on an assignment. So you would have to, of course, well, actually, I don't know if it's required to initialize this as a GitHub directory, but I would recommend it so that you can track it on GitHub at like whatever assignments you do on GitHub. So what I would do is just copy it to the clipboard, do a git clone, paste it, and make sure you're in the directory that you store your GitHub assignments at. And then after that, it will copy it. Then you'll be able to see it. Let's see, what was it called? Algo Caesar Cipher. I've already done a few assignments. So you'd see that. And then you could CD into there. Let's see, Algo AESAR. Great. So if you're tracking all of your all of your repos for your assignments, you're going to have to remove this Git because otherwise it's going to recognize it as a sub repo, and you'll have problems adding it to your repo. So you just do rm rf and make sure you spell it right, .git while you're in the correct folder. Then boom, OSA, and then you don't have it anymore. And then you just do code, algo, and then whatever you just downloaded. Can't spell.
Yeah, and the deletion of the Git directory, we're actually going to show you all a different approach, but I think this is the most critical bit of how to organize stuff, which is really good to see. And thank you, Connor, because a lot of folks do have questions about that. And then in the Windows terminal program, you should be able to use the code command to open up the directory with the assignment in VS Code. And Adam, you raised a good point, and maybe you all can help educate me. Is the Windows terminal program the same as PowerShell, or are they different?
Yeah, so
Okay,
they're
I actually do. Oh,
sorry,
no,
go ahead.
you're good. I think you know this one a little better than I do.
Yeah, so basically all that happens if you, for me, by default on most modern Windows computers, you'll have both like installed at the start. If they're not, you can easily just go to the store and install the terminal application. But when you open a PowerShell, it's basically just going to open a Windows terminal or a Windows PowerShell in the terminal app. So your terminal app holds all of your different types of terminals. You can have a Bash terminal, a Linux terminal, an Ubuntu terminal, a PowerShell terminal. So your terminal app, if you click the little arrow drop down that's in the terminal app, you can a drop down will pull down and it'll have all the different types of terminals that you can open up. So when you open up a PowerShell, it basically just opens your terminal application and then makes a PowerShell window in that application, if that makes sense.
Got it. Thank you. That does make sense. And if I'm tracking correctly, we never want to be using PowerShell for this course.
Yeah, that's correct. So the easiest way to do it is just make in the terminal application, just make Ubuntu your default. And then anytime you want to open a terminal with Linux, just type Windows what type terminal in your search bar instead of PowerShell, basically. So that'll do the trick.
Awesome. Thank you, man. And just to confirm, everyone has done that, correct? We're all now set up. Cool. So I recommend always opening up the terminal the same way, however you do it, to avoid any confusion. And let's now do the same thing for VS Code. Perfect, Connor, and you read my mind. So in VS Code, if you open up the terminal, which you can do by going to the terminal menu, yep, and hitting new terminal. And then at the top, yep, Connor, if you want to drive the bus on this, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, so just like how in terminal we set a default terminal, we can do the same in VS Code, so it's more effortless. So if I remember correctly, you just do select default profile, and then you can select them. And then I think it's just born again shell, but if you're on a Mac or something, it might be.
We are, yeah, it's going to be Bash because we're all on Windows or Linux here.
Yeah, so it's probably Bash. And then whenever you add a new one, it's going to be automatically that, but you can just make it whatever you want, whatever is supported.
Awesome, man. Thank you. And I highly, highly recommend, and in fact, everyone please do this now, because Connor, if you want to demo, like hit that little plus symbol to open up another terminal. You might want to have multiple terminals, or Connor, if you don't mind demoing, like say, right click on that Python README file in your VS Code browser. Yep. And where it says open an integrated terminal, go ahead and click on that. And that command is your best friend, because if you get a little lost in the file system, you can use the VS Code File Explorer to open a terminal in the directory of the file or directory that you're doing that right click on. And so by us setting up VS Code's default terminal profile, we're making sure that it's always going to be in WSL2 and Ubuntu as well, no matter how many terminals we open or where. And let me just double check and see, has everyone done that as well? And is everyone good to go now with their VS Code default terminal profile?
So for I downloaded VS Code earlier, and maybe I missed something when I was rebooting, but I follow what he did. I did the new terminal, and do I need to add anything else, or
Yeah,
did
let's
something else out, or
actually Gary, Gary, is that you?
yes, yes.
Perfect. I thought so. I get a little lost in the Zoom grid sometimes. Actually, just go ahead and share your screen real quick and we can set this up, and
Okay.
that'd be perfect. And actually it'll be a good demo for other folks as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and thank you for asking, because again, from having with multiple cohorts, this is by far, I would say, the greatest source of confusion for WSL2 users.
Okay. Shoot. Okay.
Yeah, so this looks great, and that default profile looks good. And Awesome. Yep. And so now in the terminal, see all the way on sort of the right near the top of the terminal, there's that little arrow that points up. Where down
top?
you yeah,
Okay.
go ahead and click on that. I'm sorry, I apologize. Maybe it's the little three.
Oh, you looking for terminal?
Yeah, there. I always, it's, you know what it is, where it says PowerShell and PowerShell, there's the little plus symbol, and it's the tiny little arrow next to the plus symbol.
Got it.
Yep.
Yeah, there are other ways to do this as well that I'll show you guys, but this is a
Okay.
good one. And now, select default profile.
The third one from the bottom.
Thank you.
So,
Yep. And which is the one that we want here again? Is it Bash? I see. VS Code is not
He's not connected
running.
to the
Right.
Ubuntu. I think he has to close
one of the
VS
PowerShells.
Code.
Yeah.
No, just close the whole VS Code
All right.
and just go to terminal and open up the Ubuntu. Just that it's that black thing right next to Edge on okay, yeah,
Mhm.
so now you're in Ubuntu.
And thank you.
All right.
Press any key and then do code and then dot, and then you should be able to open up. Wait, oh, it's installing. Right?
It does appear to be, let's see, process exited. Press enter to restart. Let's press enter and see what happens. WSL registration failed with some sort of error code. Please enable the virtual machine.
I know what this is. So you're gonna have to shut off your computer, press F12 or whatever it is to get yourself into the BIOS. Then you're
Yeah.
gonna look for some virtualization setting in the BIOS. It's different for every BIOS, but I had to do this too.
Back
And
end of it.
you just
Yeah.
turn on virtualization.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome. Let's
All
do this. Connor, if I may ask, and Adam, if you guys could follow up with Gary later on, to help make sure everything gets set up, because I just want to, Gary, I apologize, because normally I really do like to get everyone set up and moving in lockstep on this.
Okay.
But I want to make sure to cover some of these other pieces, for now. So,
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes
okay,
sense.
awesome. Yeah,
Okay.
I would say follow along as best as you can, take some notes, and then you've got Connor and Adam who can help drive you through the rest of this super quick once we're done.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you, sir. Much appreciated. And again, thank you for letting me know, because that's what today is for. Like, this is what Installfest is for, to get all the odds and ends of our environments figured out.
All right.
And Connor, actually, would you mind screen sharing? And if you don't mind, we can sort of pair and I'll navigate and you can drive and we can demo. And that way folks can see this in the actual WSL2 environment.
Of course.
Awesome, man.
So
Thank
what do
you.
you want me to do?
Yeah. So I'm just going to run through this Installfest Windows doc. And so now that we've got a terminal open and we are in the Ubuntu environment, and if you don't mind, Connor, actually close out this terminal and let's use the VS Code terminal.
The VS Code?
Yeah,
Okay.
I sort of try to put everyone in VS Code and hit like Control plus. I think it is. It'll make the font size a bit bigger. Perfect. And maybe just get rid of all that stuff on the side.
Like that? Or like this? Is that what you mean?
Just so we can see the terminal.
Oh,
Perfect.
there we go.
Yeah. So we are now in Linux, and go ahead and type pwd for me, print working directory, right? And we saw this with Francisco, and look at this directory path, /home, right? And that slash at the very beginning, that's the root directory. If I'll show you guys later, but you can imagine the whole file directory system as a tree. Root is the thing at the top of the tree. And this is an absolute path that Francisco was talking about earlier. And this is also how we can tell for sure we're in Linux, because we're not seeing like C : or anything like that. Home, every user, you can have multiple users in Linux, just like with Windows, and every user gets their own directory in home. And so Connor's username here is Nelik, and he's gone ahead and created the Code Platoon assignments directory in his home directory. And go ahead, Connor, real quick and type who am I? So all these command line programs are little programs that come with the shell, and this shows us our username, right? And so these are useful because they help get you oriented and make sure you're in the right spot. So whether it's Linux, Mac, or Windows, the question is always, how do I install software? And how do I get software from the internet? And what software engineers use is a program called a package manager, often from the command line. And the package manager that is most commonly used on Linux, is called apt, A-P-T. And that's exactly what we see Connor doing here. We have to use this sudo super user do command. There is a special kind of user on every Linux system called the root user, who has like the super admin permissions to do everything. And certain activities are restricted to the root user. But the root user could also say delete everything. So to be secure and safe, what happens is I, as the normal user Nelik, or Connor as Nelek, and Connor, am I saying that username right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So as Nelek has permission with sudo to temporarily get these superpowers to do things like install programs that we only want the super admin to do. And that way, in my normal day-to-day coding, if I accidentally do rm space -rf / to delete everything, which Connor, if you want to type it out and not hit enter, yeah, or you don't even want to do that at all, that's totally fine. I'll put it in the Zoom chat. This is the classic, if you really want to screw someone over on Linux, you tell them to delete all directories in the whole file system. I think we'll be blocked from doing that without sudo permissions, but Connor is totally right to not even fiddle around with it. So we temporarily get our root user superpowers to install stuff with this program apt that will talk to a server on the internet that has tons of open source programs created by people everywhere. And let's go ahead and why don't you just run sudo apt-get update. And so what this does is this talks to some server for apt up in the cloud to get an updated list of all, like, it's like getting a new version of the phone directory. Maybe someone's address has changed, so on and so forth. So now if I install something, I know I'm going to install the most recent version. And why don't you just go ahead and install Python 3? And folks, if you haven't installed Python already, please go ahead and do this. And I think it should be fine to run this command if you haven't installed already, Connor, correct? Because it will just tell you that it's already installed.
I'm not too familiar with Linux. Do you have to do install, or is it just sudo apt-get and then the package?
You are correct. It is install. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah. And in fact, Connor already has the newest version. It's already installed. I love it. Connor, why don't you just go ahead and install Python 3-pip as well? We're going to learn more about pip tomorrow, but just like we're using apt right now to install the Python programming language, Python itself has a tool for getting Python programs, often called like libraries or modules, written by other people that we're going to use, because there's so much amazing code out there, we're not going to write it all ourselves. So pip is a Python package manager specifically for installing Python programs.
Is this it?
Yes, sir. That looks good. And you already have that installed. And then we need to install something called Python 3-setup tools. I'm not sure what that is. To be totally honest, setup tools is all one word without a dash. Yep,
Like that?
that looks beautiful. And by the way, if we wanted to, we could list all these packages in one install command. So interesting. Let me do a quick check-in. Does everyone have those 3 Python packages installed? And Gary, I know you may need to catch up on this one. No worries on that. Okay, awesome. Has everyone here actually, Connor, why don't you demo real quick? Type which space Python 3 and hit enter. So the which command tells you where a program lives. And why don't you do which space, it should be pip3 as well. So that is where in our file system these programs live. Bin is short for binary, and sort of by tradition, that's where these executable programs, these programs that execute things, get put. And everyone, please do run those two commands. This is also a sanity check to make sure I have those things indeed installed. Right, and that's in fact exactly what we're going to do next is install the Python virtual environment. And I do want to make sure that we install the right version. Because I'm not necessarily sure we want to install the specific version of Python 3. Give me one moment here. Let's just try. Connor, why don't you go ahead and sudo apt-get install Python 3 -venv. Let's not worry. I know in the curriculum doc it says a specific version of Python. Let's try it without that and see how we do. So venv is short for virtual environment, and that's how we're going to keep different Python programs separate. Because I might be using, we're going to learn how to use this Python library Django for building web apps. And for one project, I might be using the newest version of Django, version 6. But maybe I'm working on a project for a client that already exists, and they have a much older version of Django, version 4. I need a way for one collection of Python programs to use Django version 6 for my new project, and the other one to use the older version of Django, version 4. And Python uses something called a virtual environment to do that. The one thing I want to say about virtual environments, they have nothing at all to do with virtual machines like WSL2. Python virtual environments are actually pretty simple, even though they don't feel that way. So just don't let the fancy name fool you. It's actually much simpler than that. And let's just go ahead and demo this real quick. And in fact, I'd like everyone to follow along because we're going to create a default Python virtual environment that you can use for a whole bunch of your homework assignments. Connor, go ahead and navigate to your home directory. Oh, perfect. You're already ahead of me here. Why don't you type out how to create a virtual environment command and leave the command up there and I'll talk through what it does. Yeah, the command is Python 3 space -m space venv space default. And let me explain what this is before we run it. So if we look at sort of the structure of this command on the command line, the first command is the name of the program that we're going to run, Python version 3. The second thing, this -m, whenever you see a command line program and then there's a space and like a dash something, that's what's called a flag. And as you saw from Francisco's lesson, you see this all the time, you know, ls space -a. So there's always, flags are a very common pattern for command line programs and you'll see them everywhere. This particular flag, -m, is saying, hey, Python, we're going to run a module, which is just a fancy name for some Python code that somebody wrote that we can share amongst each other. The name of this module is venv, which is what we just installed a minute ago. The next argument, just like you can give a function 2 or 3 or 4 arguments, we're giving this Python 3 program 3 different arguments, is the name of the virtual environment that we're going to create. The name is default, and it is important to do it in the home directory because that's where we want, this is going to create a directory named default, and we want it to be in our home directory. And I see you may have already created this, which is totally okay. And Connor, please go ahead and hit enter, and let's see what happens.
Is it going to overwrite my existing one?
It might. I'm honestly not sure, so we might as well just not do it. Good call. But as you all can see, there's that directory default, and that's what got created when you run that command. So you all now should have run that command in your home directory. and you should have a directory name default. Awesome, thank you. And what Connor just did here, and if you want to maybe highlight that source default bin activate command so folks can see it. When I create a Python virtual environment, I need to turn it on, and that's called activating. And then when I use this other program, pip, to install Django, it installs it in this default virtual environment. And then when I want to work on my other project with the new version of Django, I deactivate this virtual environment, activate another virtual environment that I've created, and use pip to install it there. But for most of your homework assignments, for like at least the first 3 weeks, you can just use this one default environment. And just like Connor showed us now, there's a deactivate command we can use to turn the virtual environment off. I love talking about what's happening in the virtual environment under the hood. I'd be happy to show it a bit more later. The important thing to know is that source command runs what's called a shell script, some command line commands, and there's an actual like file of code in the default directory in bin named activate, and so we are running that program that lives in that directory. And Mikhail, yes, sir.
Yeah, is there documentation in the GitHub about this?
This is all in that Installfest windows.md file, yes.
Is there a way to know if you already created a virtual environment?
You would have to go to the directory where you installed the virtual environment and see if a directory with the name is there. Just like I can create as many directories as I want, I can create as many different virtual environments as I want.
Oh, so the virtual environment is a directory, so I would
Correct.
clone my GitHub assignment repos inside that directory?
No, you don't have to clone it inside that directory. It's a
you just
little
have to
confusing.
activate. Okay.
Yeah, what it is you will be seeing like the more Python code you write, often you'll be using like, let's say we want to, I'm trying to think of a good example here. What's a good example of something that we would, let's say, I don't know, turn a markdown file into an HTML file, right? To convert a file from one kind to another. Chances are someone's written a Python program to do that. I want to be able to install that program and use their code in my code. The way I do that is with something that's called a module. The way I install that is with this pip Python manager program. And the way I tell pip where to put it is with Python virtual environments. And that way, like for one of my programs, I want, the markdown to HTML converter, but for another, I don't. But we're going to make just one virtual environment and use it for most of the homework assignments. We're going to get more into virtual environments later as well. I don't want to get too much into it now, just because I want to make sure to cover everything that we need to. Does that help a little bit, Mikhail, in terms of orientation?
Yeah, I just never saw it in the GitHub.
Yeah, we should add a link to that from the lesson. I think that one is not there. And I'll share the link again to it. And in fact, we'll just update that later today. That's an easy fix. That's a good call. That should be pointed to a bit more clearly.
Oh, I see.
So has everyone created a virtual environment named default in your home directory? Okay, awesome. We are going to come back to that one a little later to do some setup work to make life easier, so that is important. Okay, awesome. Let me just check in with folks and see how everyone's doing, because I know there were a couple setup steps and hoops to jump in through. So, how are people feeling? Are we tracking? Do we need a short break? How's everyone doing?
It's a lot, but it's great.
Okay.
I'm not sure if I actually created the environment.
Gary, do you want to share your screen real quick and we can check and find out?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm so bad about phone.
No worries. And I'll just go ahead and drive, so to speak. So I'll kind of tell you the commands to run and just give me a sec to say them out, and that'll be good because actually this is a good way that everyone else can check and confirm this as well.
Sorry, were you talking to me about the virtual environment or Gary?
I think he was talking to me. Let me leave this.
Who said they weren't sure they had their
That was
environment
me.
installed?
That was me, but you can walk Gary through it and I'll just follow through.
No,
Oh.
Joseph, we should definitely do it with you then. Gary,
Okay.
I apologize.
You're fine.
Yeah.
I got a lot to catch up on, so I didn't know if that's what you were starting or what. But
No,
I
you're
got-
good. I think since you have to get the WSL2 installed, just some of this you'll have to get walked through later, but you can see the pieces. Yeah, I have the Zoom grid open and I'm still learning everyone's voices. So if I don't see that green square around someone, if I get confused sometimes, that's why I just didn't track.
Okay.
Joseph, yeah, if you can share your screen, let's take a look and we can see how to check that the virtual environment is installed.
So when I run this line, I get blank. Oh,
Okay.
there it goes.
So type PWD for me and hit enter. So the fact that I see /mount/C in the directory path, in the file path here, makes me worried that we're not inside the Ubuntu environment. I'm honestly not sure what the mount/C stuff is. Will you do me a favor and close this terminal and just open up the terminal again? And let's see where it opens up by default. Okay. Adam or Connor or someone, can you actually maybe help me out here? Are we actually in the Ubuntu Linux machine in the WSL2 environment right now?
It looks different than mine, and he's using the first option, the one with the penguin instead of the orange thing. Maybe that might be it.
So I don't have that one.
I see. Okay. Hop back to the terminal real quick, Joseph. Type CD for me and hit enter. Type PWD. Okay. Good news. You are indeed inside Linux in the WSL2 virtual machine. It looks like for this particular profile with the penguin, by default, it puts you somewhere else in the file system. I think it's the part maybe where the file system is shared between Windows and Linux, which is why we see MNT, which is short for mount, is in sort of like mounting the Linux file system /C. So we can change that real quick. Why don't you click that little arrow again, where we see all these settings and options? Yeah, let's go to settings. How do we see? Where's the I need a little help, I think, on
He didn't have that option for some reason for the one that I have. Yeah, he just has the other one.
right. No, I'm wondering where we set the directory that this terminal opens to.
Oh,
You
let
know,
me
yeah, we'll come back to that later, actually. Please remind me, and if I have to, we can follow up tomorrow on this. Let's just leave all this as is, because we know you're in the right spot now. So I apologize that there's this extra step for now, but now we know that this is where you want to be. Go ahead and type ls. Yeah, before this, we might as well check.
I found it. You have to go down to so in the settings on the left-hand side, you're gonna on the left-hand side, you're gonna see defaults under profiles. Yep. And then let's see. Scroll to the top and then you'll see starting directory. I think that's it.
Yeah, unclick use parent process directory. That's like wherever this was run from. I think, should we just leave it like that? Does that look right?
Mine is what his was, but I don't know. It might be different if you're using the other thing. I don't know. You just have to play with it and test
Okay.
it.
Yeah, hit save. We'll see if this works, but this is where you have to modify stuff.
You could just put tilde, maybe it will work. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't want to get too lost in it for now, though I do want to follow up on this later. So let's go ahead. It's always good to use the ls command to get oriented and double check stuff. We see for sure we don't have a default directory here, so let's go ahead and create a Python virtual environment named default, which will create that directory named default here. Nice. Yep, and go ahead and hit enter. Awesome. And now if you go ahead and type ls, and it's always a good habit to double check command line stuff because it does get complicated. We see that it's there. And now try running that command source space default. And if you hit tab as you're typing, it should autocomplete for you, which is really nice because if the autocomplete doesn't work, it tells you you're in the wrong spot. So default/bin. And it's also how you avoid typos. So please use tab all the time. /activate. Yep, nice. And now if you look at your command prompt, you can see that it's changed, and in parentheses, we see the name of the virtual environment that we've activated. If you want to turn it off, go ahead and type deactivate and hit enter. And so I noticed if you hit, I think you know this already, but for everyone else, if you hit the up arrow, you can go to the last command you ran. And in fact, you can go through your whole command history with the up arrows and the down arrows. And in fact, if you also do Control R, and go ahead and hit Control R for me, this will search through your entire history of commands. I use this all the time because my memory is terrible. So go ahead and hit Control R for me and just start typing activate. Yeah, I think you need to start typing.
What in the world? Okay, so what am I typing now? Activate?
Yep, keep typing.
What the heck? What is this?
So this is searching through the entire history of all the commands you've typed in the shell for, I don't know, at least a day or two. The first thing it's found is the most recent one that matches this. But this is not what we want. Now hit Control R again. It has just gone to the next match that it found but when you hit Control R. So it takes a little bit of getting used to, but there's a lot of commands to remember. So this is your best friend. And now if you hit enter, you will run this command.
And that was
That's pretty
Control
cool.
R and then whatever for searching.
Say that again.
That was Control R and then you search.
Correct. You hit Control R, it turns on the search. It will find the most recent instance command that matches whatever you type. To go through the history of search results, you keep hitting Control R, like sort of like an up arrow or down arrow. I know that it's a little bit of a different way of sort of using something on the keyboard, but it's incredibly powerful and useful. So I did want to demo that. So Joseph, you are set up, man. Thank you for sharing your screen and pairing and demoing code.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, awesome. We have covered a lot of ground here. We do have a couple more things to cover. Let's see, it is 3:30. When did we get started at this? Have we been going for about an hour?
I don't remember. It's been a long time.
It's been a while. Yeah, I think it's, are we about ready for a short break? Yeah, and I see a couple hands up. Mikhail, yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't want to harp on this, but are we gonna go over virtual environments in the future? Because I'm still trying to understand. So every time I run code, I have to set up the virtual environment.
We are
To
going to go
activate it?
through, we are going to go through virtual environments in the future. What we are going to do at the end of our lesson today is set it up so that the default virtual environment we created always is turned on. So for the first couple weeks, you won't have to worry about it. Yeah, great question. In essence, you're correct, and we're gonna do a little setup to make life easier. And we'll talk more about virtual environments this weekend and later in the course as well. Mikhail, yes, sir. Or Mickey, I'm sorry.
Hey, I was just following along with what we were doing to help with his setup. And when I run ls, I'm getting java.js, default, example.py, Installfest.
Okay, why don't you share your
Sure.
screen and we'll debug this
Yeah.
issue, and then that's, I think, the perfect time for a break. So
So this is
are we
what I
looking
was working with
at
here.
which terminal are we using here? This one or the one in VS Code?
All right, so when I go to VS Code, that's why I was following along. I was trying to get it. I don't have Ubuntu showing up.
Okay, let's close VS
And
Code then.
so
And I see. Go ahead and type PWD for me in the terminal. Okay. Go ahead and close VS Code. So, okay. So let's not worry about VS Code for a moment. Let's just stick with the terminal, and let me make sure you have a Python virtual environment created. And then we will see about opening VS Code and go from there. Does that sound good?
Yep.
Awesome.
So that's what we open to with the default here for the terminal. There we go.
Okay. Type PWD for me just as a sanity check to make sure we're in the right directory. Yep. Go ahead, type ls for me. So if we look at the file path, we do indeed see that we're in your home directory. The file path indicates that, you know, we're in Linux. If you type who am I, all one word, and hit enter. Yep, Mickey Gardner. I see the default directory created for your virtual environment, which is awesome. Why don't we just activate it just for fun? So source space default /bin/activate, and you can use tab to help autocomplete it so you don't have to type it out, and or like me if you make typos. Yep. Awesome. So I see that file java.js that you mentioned. The .js
Yeah.
file extension makes me think that this is some JavaScript code that you wrote at some point. But why don't you just go ahead and type code, which should open up VS Code with this directory set to its sort of like workspace for the file explorer and stuff. And let's see how VS Code opens up from here. And go ahead and full screen this VS Code for me if you don't mind.
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah, so that's where I think that's where the Java.js is coming from. Something I was working on before when I first got this set up.
Yep. I would just, for everyone's reference, I would recommend like make all file names lowercase until Francisco and I specifically say to do something different. Same with directories as well. And so then when in the VS Code terminal, I see is indeed the PowerShell. And if you click on that little arrow and do select default profile, is there an option to choose bash, or what happens? Where it says select default profile, 3 up from the bottom. Okay. And where it says
So
select it, yeah.
he's not connected to WSL. If you look at the lower left hand corner, those two arrows there, click on that.
Oh man, thank you
I
so
think that's
much.
where-
That little blue thing.
Yeah,
Yeah. Thank you.
click on it. And then the WSL. It should do it by default. I don't know, like you skip the step and something.
People have to
Yeah.
install the WSL extension.
This is why we do Installfest, especially for Windows and WSL, but then hopefully now we'll be set up and good. So the real question now is, well, let's set the default profile and then we'll see if we open VS Code again, is it set up right?
Do I need to hold?
I'm sorry?
He said it's downloading, I think.
Oh, okay. Let's see. If this is gonna take a while, we might have to switch gears. Why don't we do this? Why don't we take a 10-minute break now? And then if this is done downloading after the break, we can finish it off. Sound good to folks?
Did Gary
Sounds
do the virtualization thing on the BIOS?
That is a good question. Gary, I think what was the next step you had to do?
Yeah, I gotta reset and enable virtualization. I checked the system. Like I have to restart it.
Okay, awesome. Why don't
So-
you do that during this
Okay.
10-minute break? So at least that step is set up, and then we can follow up with you more after at the end of the day to help make sure that you get set up.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely. All right, let's take a 10-minute break, folks. Let's make it a real 10 because there are a couple things that we need to cover. What we're going to look at next is making sure that Node.js, so we can run JavaScript, is set up. We are going to make sure Git is set up and do a little bit of configuration stuff with Git as well. And then we are going to end by exploring a little bit more of Linux and the command line with what's called a shell profile, so that every time we open up a new terminal or a new shell session, certain things happen, such as every time we open up a terminal, we're going to make sure our default Python virtual environment is turned on, so we don't have to think about it. And then we're going to install the Postgres database, which may be, that does get a little funky with WSL. So that one may need an extra step or two. So 10-minute break, and then we will keep the ball rolling.
Hey, Adam, can I ask you a quick question? Because I think I'm just different than I'm not using WSL. So I created the default version there.
Len, one sec. Yes, absolutely. Just folks, if you want to take a break, please take it now, because in 10 minutes we're gonna pick it up and start again. And Len, yes, sir, what's up?
Okay, so I got the default working. I created the virtual. I just created a directory called Code Platoon, and then week 1 I created in there. I can create another one, I think, later somewhere else. But
why don't you share
that,
your screen?
Yeah.
Thank you. And you're on like proper Linux, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Perfect. And you were saying?
So here's what I got.
Mhm.
I think it's fine, other than I got to make this lowercase, and then
yeah, you avoid. So it turns out by default, Linux is case sensitive for directory names.
oh, okay.
By default, Macs are not case sensitive for directory names, so you can change that setting. So for the group projects with some people on Linux and some people on Mac, that
Check.
in fact, yeah.
Good.
Yeah, so it's just a good habit. But yes, what's up? What's the
I just want to make sure that, so because I had NPN, I had Node. I actually did like a toy scripted Node before, and then when I do it now, it tells me like, so am I understanding this right? This environment is like a whole separate Linux environment, and now I have to reload. I got to pull NPM and everything into here.
You mean the Python virtual environment?
Mm-hmm.
Got it. No, great question. It is not a whole separate Linux environment. It is terribly named because it has nothing to do with virtual machines at all. Let me in fact just show you right now what it is. Go ahead and type clear to clear the terminal for me. Go ahead and type echo space $, and then in all caps path, one word. Yep, and hit enter. So are you familiar with shell environment variables?
Nope.
Okay, awesome. So this is getting a little advanced, but when you start a shell session,
Mhm.
the shell program runs in the terminal, right? VS
Okay.
Code has a terminal program. Windows has PowerShell. Mac has the terminal. Linux has one. The
Mhm.
terminal runs the shell program. The shell has all this stuff: CD, ls, who am I, pwd. All of that is the shell.
Mhm.
The terminal's job is just to show stuff on the screen. This is from the 70s, where a terminal might have been a line printer or,
Right.
you know, like a glass, like old school television type thing.
Mhm.
So every time you start a shell session, a whole bunch of variables are created that let you do stuff. This path variable is created every time you start a shell session. It has a list of all the directories that have all the programs we might run. So when I type a command on the command line, like say Python, I hit enter, how does my shell know where the Python program lives? Well, it looks at this path. And if you notice, there are colons that separate all of these directory paths.
Mhm.
And if you notice at the very beginning of the path, it is home/linear/code/platoon/1/default bin.
Mhm.
That is the path to the bin or binary directory that holds the programs you can run inside that Python virtual environment. Go ahead and type deactivate for me and hit enter. Now go ahead and type echo space $path in all caps again. Look what is not at the beginning of the path anymore. What is
Okay.
not there at all.
Yeah,
Our
yeah.
path no longer has the path to that Python virtual environment directory. And go ahead and type for me ls space tilde slash code platoon. Tilde is your home directory, right? So give
Yep,
me the
yep.
path to week one. So you'll want to put the default in your home directory later and not have it be in week one at all.
Okay.
In fact, we'll need to do that in just a minute.
Mhm.
Slash default slash bin. So
Oh.
this is good too. So you can see, right?
Yep.
Yeah, just hit the up arrow. And now just add slash bin at the end of that and hit enter. Notice what's inside here. Python, Python 3.
Oh yeah.
So if, say, for some reason I needed to work with two different versions of Python, I can use a Python virtual environment to do that. But all a Python virtual environment is all the stuff you install goes inside there and it changes the path to point there.
Okay.
Yeah, it has zero impact on Node, on Git, on anything else.
How was why did it, when I looked it up earlier, it came up. Am I in NPM right now? Is this saying it's there?
NPM, you're not, NPM isn't really something you're in or out of. It's a
Yeah.
program that you run to do stuff. And if
Oh,
you
I
don't
see. This is just
give-
telling me install.
yeah,
Got it.
it's like pip. It's for installing stuff. So it's giving you the man page, the
Oh,
document.
it's the node install. That's right. It's the node
Yeah.
program manager.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay. Anyways, we both want to break.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was awesome.
Absolutely. My pleasure, man. Just you are gonna have to, I recommend delete that default directory, run the command to create the Python virtual environment inside your home directory. Because
Okay.
we're gonna update the bash RC shell script that happens every time you start up to turn on that default environment. So it's gonna make life way easier to just put it in your right in your home directory.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Yeah, so I would just recommend doing that right now so you don't forget and it's done and then take a break. I'm gonna take a break as well and I'll see you all in about 5. Awesome, and thank you for asking.
Thank you. All right, where we at? Cool.
Everyone, how's it going? How's everybody doing? I know today is a big day.
Doing pretty good.
Nice. How is everyone in terms of energy too? Because honestly, I know it's a lot being on Zoom and doing all this stuff.
Well, I'm used to waking up in the afternoon and I had to wake up at 7.
I feel you, Connor. I'm not a morning person either. There's a lot of pluses to being a morning person, so I've been really working hard to embrace it, but it's definitely a transition. Yeah, I do recommend for everyone, like the best software engineers I know actually like are really physically active people. They're like mountain climbing, or my brother-in-law who's been really successful in his career. Every software engineering job he was ever at, he'd go to the gym at like 3 o'clock every day. And if you get your work done, no one cares. That's also kind of why we have that 90-minute lunch. It's not just in case like class runs a bit long, it's so that people have enough time to get some physical activity in. Especially as we get into this, because we're going to be doing this every day. I mean, I have a standing desk and I wouldn't be able to survive without it. I highly recommend getting yourself a proper setup if possible, with like a second monitor or external monitor and keyboard and mouse. I've made standing desks out of cardboard boxes before. The idea is like every hour you switch off or just you stand up for a little, but most importantly, just lots of breaks. This week is a big week. So, I know there's a lot. On that note, let's dive back in. I do apologize because I totally forgot to pause the recording. So I'll edit out the long break there, but I think we're all back. Joseph, that was a great issue to look at. Let's see, is Gary with us or his machine restarting? Okay, so his machine may be restarting. I think we just need to keep on rolling though. And Connor, if you're down, it would be a huge help if we could continue sort of the driving and the navigating together.
Oh yeah,
And
sure.
screen share.
Just be the steering wheel.
I love it, man. And I love all the comments and stuff that you're adding. Thank you. Please keep it up. So everyone should have Python set up, a virtual environment created in your home directory. We're going to add that to our bash profile later. So I think it might have been Mikhail, you were pointing this out so that we don't have to create a new Python virtual environment every time. Joseph had a great question during the break about Python virtual environments. Like, what is it? Is it like a whole nother Linux VM? Does it mess with other stuff? A Python and virtual environment, all it does is create a directory and change a shell environment variable that I'll maybe show you all later. It has zero impact on Node.js, JavaScript, Git, anything else. All it does is change when I use pip to install a Python package, where does it go? And when I run a Python program, where does it look for stuff? And so we'll come back to that a bit later. Let's go ahead and make sure we have Node.js set up. So just like pip will let us install Python libraries, Python programs written by other people, Node.js will let us install JavaScript libraries written by other people as well. And Connor, if you don't mind, actually, do you want to open up a browser real quick and maybe just like show people the NPM site?
Yeah, of course.
Perfect. So pip has a site like this too, but NPM, or the Node.js package manager, is like the repository. And why don't you just look for React of all the different, I love it. All the different JavaScript programs written by people that they want to share with the world so that other people can use them are here. And there's also, a server in the cloud that the NPM command line program will talk to install this stuff. And you can see how many weekly downloads there are. And we've got like 25 million people a week installing it. There's a link to the GitHub page there if you want to click on the React GitHub page. It's up at the top right.
Top right.
Down a bit more. There you go.
I didn't see it.
So you can see this is the GitHub repository for React for all of its code, where Facebook puts it. When we run npm install React, it probably doesn't grab it from right here, but this is what we are installing. So I just wanted to kind of make that a little visual. It's great to spend a little time exploring these things. If you actually want to open up PyPy real quick, I believe it's pypi.com. I think that's it. This is the same version of that for pip, the Python package manager.
You said PyPy?
Yeah, let's just search for that and see what we get. There you go. PyPy. So like, go ahead and search for Django. Or I'm sorry, this is the wrong place. Maybe it's pip. Oh, it is PYPI. Okay, confusingly, there's two different things. Try pypi.org. There we go. the Python package index. Go ahead and search for Django. And so when we run, as we will later in the course, pip install Django, this is where we can see all the list of these different Python modules or libraries or packages, as they're called. And you can see a bit about them. And what I do recommend is as you go into the class, you'll be installing all sorts of libraries for Python with pip or for JavaScript with npm. I always take, whenever I am installing a library I'm not familiar with, I just take 5 minutes and I skim the page on PyPy or npm and I skim the GitHub's README, just enough to learn a tiny bit about it so that if I run into an issue, I know where to go next. And I think the more you do that, it's like if you're building a map of the world, it's like Asia is over here, Africa is over here, Europe is, north, and Antarctica is south. I don't need like all the rivers and the streams. I just want to kind of build my big picture view. I think if you do a little bit of that as you go, it really starts to add up. So why don't we go ahead? I've been talking about this enough. Why don't we go ahead and make sure we have npm installed and set up our JavaScript stuff. So Node.js is the program we use to run JavaScript on your computer. It's called the JavaScript engine. So browsers have a JavaScript engine, and when you type JavaScript into your browser console or your browser is running JavaScript code, the JavaScript engine or interpreter is the program that actually runs the JavaScript. The JavaScript engine Google created for its browser Chrome is called V8, and Node.js is actually the Chrome JavaScript engine ripped out of Chrome and wrapped with some other code around it and stuck here so we can run JavaScript on the command line. So let's go ahead and set up npm if we haven't, which is what we're going to use to install JavaScript stuff, and then we can set up our Node stuff. So we're using apt get install. So sudo apt get install npm, and I see you already have it there. So folks, run this command if you haven't. If you're not sure, exactly like Connor just showed you, npm space -- version. The 2 dashes is another kind of flag, right? We're running the npm program and telling us to tell it what version it is. And if you run that command and you get some npm doesn't exist message, that's how you know it's not installed. And once npm is installed, we are going to install a program to manage different versions of Node.js. The name of this program is N. So let's do sudo space npm install, or just and then after the install, we're going to add a flag -g. This is for global. Later on, we will learn about how to install JavaScript packages with npm into specific directories. We normally don't do a global install. npm has created a directory in our home directory. It's going to get installed there so we can use it everywhere. Most JavaScript programs we install with npm are not global installs. So unless you specifically are told to, you don't want to be doing global installs. But since this program N for Node Version Manager is used to manage what version of Node.js, what version of JavaScript we're using, we're installing it globally. And go ahead and install this sucker if you haven't, Connor. Awesome. So has everyone installed this program now? Has everyone got N installed on their computer? Awesome. So now I think, go ahead and just type N. Let's see what happens. Yep. Awesome. So if you just type N anywhere now, it runs this JavaScript program N. It shows the version of Node.js that's installed. If we had more than one version installed, you could select it. Go ahead and you can just quit this with, I think, Control-C to kill it. And let's do N space stable. And this will install the stable version of Node.js if it's not installed already. And I think you do have to use sudo in front of this. I know, I'm not sure if we should have installed npm with sudo, to be honest. the problem is now we have to use sudo with everything,
Gosh.
but it's such a, yeah, it's like it's in our documentation, and so I didn't want to go against it. So we can, if it's a pain, we'll fix it later. So you all, for installing some stuff, may need to be using sudo more. And we can come back and deal with that later if it becomes a problem.
So, magic word.
Yeah. I'm not certain if we need to use the sudo with WSL2. It says we don't, so that's okay. We can cross this bridge later, and it all works perfectly fine. It just might be an extra step. So what is the stable version of Node.js? I've been doing a lot of talking, so I know it's a bit of a switch to question mode. Any thoughts on like what that means? Like, why do we care about like different versions of programming languages? And crickets is totally fine because I get that all this stuff is new. So just like other pieces of technology, programming changes are getting new features added to them all the time. Eventually, older versions of a programming language become outdated. They're made more efficient. There's stuff like that. And if you go ahead and, oh, you're going to the changelog?
Trying to find it. I don't know where it is though.
Yeah, I would just Google like Node.js changelog. I have no idea where they put it either.
I hope this is it.
That looks good enough. So you can see all the different versions of Node.js, and I guess 2022 is maybe the most recent. Do they list? Oh, here we go. If you go to Node.js, I'll put it in the Zoom chat. Nodejs.org about releases. And I just Googled like Node.js stable is how I found it.
Okay, that's too long.
Or if you go ahead and you Google Node.js stable version.
Oh, you want me to do that?
Yeah, just go ahead and Google it. And under that first result where it says Node.js releases, click on that.
How do I get this thing at the top to get out of my way?
What thing at the top?
Oh, you guys probably can't see it.
Oh, the Zoom
Yeah,
control bar.
it's movable. If you click on it, you can move it around.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's getting pretty annoying.
No, you're doing a great job, man. Beautiful. So, imagine that we are Reddit and we have a ton of our code in JavaScript running on Node.js. We are going to care an awful lot about the newer version of Node. As you all know, people are like hacking into stuff all the time, so it's not uncommon for there to be like security releases to a version. And so part of the reason like a version of a programming language becomes old is because the organization or companies supporting it aren't worrying about addressing security issues anymore because they're focusing on the new version. So companies are always paying attention to, it's like a release schedule over years. And you never want to be the first person to switch to something new. Anything current is supported. There's maintenance mode. There's often what's called long-term support, LTS, and those are like the versions that are committed to. So we've installed a stable supported current version of Node.js to let us run a stable supported current version of JavaScript. I just want to pause and check in and see if folks have any questions. Okay, cool. There's not a ton to do with Node. There's not as much as with Python. So that's much simpler. And if you want to demo real quick, Connor, just go ahead and type Node and hit enter. And just like with Python, we got what's called a REPL, a read, evaluate, print loop. I can type JavaScript in here and hit enter, and Node.js will run it. When I'm writing code, I'll have like a bunch of different terminals open, and I'll like almost always have this open in one of my terminals. Because if I don't remember the syntax for a particular command, or I want to test something out, just having this there and ready to go is a really easy way to do stuff. So I recommend, I think that's a good habit to develop. And then you can just hit, when you're ready, Connor, you can hit Control C to exit this.
Can you do a quit, or is that just for Python?
I think Python has the quit. This might have a quit. I don't know if it has exit. I always do Control C. It might have an exit command. I'm honestly not sure. It always annoys me a little that I can't Control C to exit the Python REPL. Any questions around Node.js or JavaScript? And does everyone have Node.js installed and knows they can run JavaScript programs with it? Okay, awesome. Let's take a look at Git. So I think everyone should have Git installed, and Git is sort of the big boy, right? As you all may or may not know, Git is what's called version control software. As someone very rightfully asked, hey, if I use this rm command to delete a file, does it go on forever? And the answer is yes, it is. But what Git lets us do is save our work as we go. So even if we delete stuff, we can go back. Like, if you've ever used like Google Docs file version thing or something similar for Microsoft Excel, can you raise your hand if you've just used like file version history for some sort of program before? Cool. So for those of you who are unfamiliar, Google Docs, it lets you see every single change to say like a Word doc, and you can go back in time to a previous version. And that's what Git lets us do with our code. And that's what version control does, is we save all our progress on the code we write there. And then at any point, I can go back in time. It also lets us really easily share code with each other to collaborate and review and discuss code and manage and control how we go about that process. GitHub is a web app that hosts Git repositories in the cloud, and lets us collaborate and communicate, and is kind of a social network. So it's like a visual front end for Git, and it lets us store them in the cloud. So all of your work, you will be creating Git repositories that will be on your computer and on GitHub in the cloud, and we'll show you how you have them talk to each other. For now, what we're going to do is just make sure Git is installed. If you just type Git and hit enter, you should see something happen, or Git space -- version. Does anyone here not have Git installed? Okay, awesome. And if you needed to install it, you would use apt-get to install it as well. What we're going to do is we're also going to configure Git on our computer with some defaults. And why don't you actually run the config command first, Connor, to see what already exists. Git.
What was it? Global config or config? I forgot.
It's git config space -- global space -l. It's a confusing as heck command. Yep.
Like
Beautiful.
that?
Yep. Awesome. And everyone, please go ahead and run that same command now as well. Git space config space -- global space -l. It doesn't matter where you run it. This command is looking at the global git config which I believe lives in like a dot directory in your home directory. And you can see a username and a user.email. You can see the default editor Git will use for certain things that are called commit messages to keep track of the changes that we make and some other things. Does everyone have a username and an email for their Git global config that look correct? And you may not, and we're gonna in fact set them if we have to, but I just want to know if it's set up for people or not. So if your username and email look correct, please give me a thumbs up. Okay, awesome. So I think Len, Dustin, Gary, and when you all need to set up your Git username and emails, is that correct?
I have mine set up already.
Okay, let me get a thumbs up from everyone who does not have their set up. And I feel like there's a couple people I'm not getting a thumbs up from at all. When and Len, what's your status, guys? Okay. I'm just gonna message them in Slack. I don't know if they're here, maybe the audio isn't working. If you guys can hear me, I get that it's a long day, but we're gonna be doing a lot of stuff. So I need to get communication from you guys.
Sorry, I'm still working on the Git. Yeah.
What are you working on right now on Git?
The Git config. Yeah. This.
Okay. So go ahead and share your screen, please.
Sure. Give me 1 second. How am I going to share?
Or
Actually,
actually, that's okay. We'll come back to it later.
Mhm.
So I'll just put in the commands that you're supposed to run. Cool. All right. I don't want to get into it too much, but we're going to cover a lot of ground. I get that we're on Zoom a lot, but like if you guys kind of don't tell me if stuff is installed or it's not, there's no way for me to know, and the class is going to go really fast and you're going to fall behind really quick. So I need that communication from people, and I appreciate the communication that everyone is giving me. So let's go ahead and set up VS Code as well. And this is probably the most important command to run. And I'm putting it in the Zoom chat. And Connor, why don't you just demo typing this out, even if you don't need to run it? Because with Git, every time you change code, not every time, but almost every time, you're going to make what's called a commit. And Connor, the command is git space config space -- global space core.editor space code. And you should be able to run it fine. It won't just, if you have it already changed, it won't hurt anything. We'll learn soon like what a commit message is, but basically, let's say I've been writing code for like 45 minutes and I have a new feature working. That's when I want to save that code in Git. So if I make a mistake and break something, I can go back to my code in a good state. And I want to put that code on GitHub. So in case something happens to my computer, it's there and I can share it with other people. When I do that, I'll write what's called a commit message. You need to tell Git that you don't want to use Vim to write commit messages. By default, it will open up Vim for you to write your commit messages in. Unless you really want to learn Vim, that will just be really frustrating. And the command that we typed now sets that default editor to be VS Code. And so I just want to do a check with everyone. If everyone runs that git config global -l command, and if you could run that one more time, Connor, please, git config space -- global space -l. Does everyone have their core editor set to code? Awesome. Beautiful. That is probably the most important piece. We're gonna do, we're almost home. We're gonna do one more thing with Git. Connor, why don't you please install? Most of the time you're going to use the Git program to interact with Git. There is also a command line tool called GH that we might use some of the time, and we might as well install it.
You talking about this?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It lets us do certain things more easily. Most of the time you're going to be using the Git program, but this does, it makes certain things really nice, so it's not the worst thing to install. Garrett, what's up with it? What's your question about this init default branch main?
Oh, I was just watching Connor's. He had that at the bottom of his. Yeah, the very bottom. He highlighted it. I don't have that on there. I don't know if it's important
Got
or
it.
not.
You can add it if you want. What that setting does is when you created every Git repository is what's called a default branch that has a name. The name used to be master because that name has a lot of historical baggage. The industry convention has shifted for the default branch to be named main. Git config global set default branch. I will put the command for that in the Zoom. Give me
It's
just
a quality
one
of
second.
life thing. You don't need it, but it's easier.
Yeah, I actually do recommend it. It makes sense. More critically, that's the default on GitHub now and pretty much everywhere else. So you'll end up with confusion. So that command that I pasted in the Zoom, you should be able to run that to set that. And folks, if everyone wants to run that, it certainly won't hurt.
It works for me.
Awesome. I think we'll skip the rest of this GitHub stuff as we're mostly going to be using the Git command to install stuff. Now we kind of can get to the good part, and we're going to come back to that default Python virtual environment profile that we made earlier. Yeah, this looks awesome. Connor, let's just kind of go through this stepwise a little bit, if you don't mind opening up a terminal.
Oh, sorry for skipping.
No, it's all good, man.
Which terminal?
This one's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead and type CD and hit enter. Or just plain old CD to take you to your home directory. Oh, you're there. Perfect.
Yeah.
And go ahead and type ls space -a. So if we look in here, all those files that start with dot, those config files, the ones that we're going to talk about now are bash_profile and .bash rc. And these are the config files for every time our shell program starts up. And go ahead and type echo space $ and then in all caps shell.
Echo space $ and then what?
Shell in all caps. Yep. Beautiful. So the terminal is the program that puts stuff on the screen and gets input from the keyboard. The shell is the program that, like, when we type echo and CD and ls and all this stuff that interacts with the file system and everything else, that program is called a shell. Though we'll use the term shell, terminal, and command line all interchangeably. The shell protects the kernel. It like wraps itself around it. There are different shell programs. On Linux, we'll be using one called bash, which is an acronym for Born Again Shell. It's been around for ages. It's installed by default on everything. When you start a shell session or open up a new terminal, a whole bunch of things happen behind the scenes. One of the things that happens is something called environment variables get created. And like, go ahead, and that's what we're seeing here, this $ shell. There are, just like with the programming language, the shell has a baby programming language, and these environment variables, by convention, are always uppercase and start with a $. So, like, you could create an environment variable, like if you do all caps foo, FOO, and then just equal sign, and let's just put like hello in single quotes. Yeah, exactly, just like that. Yep, and go ahead and hit enter. And now do echo space $ all caps foo. So we just created our own shell environment variable. The ones we care about are the ones that are created by default that hold information about our shell. And this one tells us the name of the shell. And every time the shell starts, it runs these config files. And the one that we want to modify is the bash profile file. So please open that up with VS Code if you don't mind. Just do code space. I would maybe close this window that you just opened. And I would just open up the terminal.
Whoops. Whoopsies.
No, no worries, man. I appreciate you doing this. We can do it from here as well. Just yeah, just do code space dot bash underscore profile. You don't need the slash because you're already in the directory. You should be able to just type bash and hit tab. Yep, and now like let's do bash underscore profile.
Whoops.
No, not
You know what?
quite.
You know what? I'll just open this directory.
That works as well. I'll just put the command in the Zoom chat as well for people who want to see it. And Connor, I apologize if I didn't explain it very well. We're just code and then opening the file named bash profile. Nice, that should do it. I'm not sure if maybe.
Yeah, it was open earlier, so that's why I'm confused. Yeah, I'll close this and I'll try to open it again.
Oh, maybe I was wrong and you're not in your home directory. There we go.
It's the bash profile.
Nice. Okay, perfect. So I apologize for the confusion there. Let me just pause and check in with folks. Does everyone have their .bash underscore profile directory open in VS Code? And please let me know, because it may be that you need to create the file if it doesn't exist.
I don't.
Okay, can you go ahead and open it up, Len? Does anyone else not have this file open in VS Code?
Yeah, I don't have this stuff, but I think I'm the exception. So
Yeah,
I
yes,
haven't been responding to you, but I just want to make sure you're aware.
I appreciate that. You are correct,
Yeah.
sir. I appreciate that, Gary. Thank you. Len, were you able to open up, or do you have to create it, or
I had to
do you run into a
create
blocker?
it. So I got to create it. That's fine.
Okay, why don't you share your screen real quick and let's do that and get you set up. And this is good because probably one or two other folks need to do this, and we can also see how to create files from the command line. Okay, awesome. So go ahead and type pwd for me. Okay, go ahead and type ls space -a.
Oops.
Hit Control C to exit out of this. I'm not sure what the a / did. Yep, ls dash and then a. Awesome. So, okay, this is good. We see a list of all the files, including the dot files. I don't see bash profile here. That's totally fine. There's two ways to create a file. If you use the code command to open a file from the command line and then save it, it'll create it. But it's really nice to know how to do it from the command line. We use a program named touch, as in like touch to create a new file. So touch space .bash underscore profile. Perfect. And now let's do code space dot bash underscore profile to open it up. Perfect, man. Awesome. And as long as you're here, if you don't mind pairing for a little bit, I can navigate and you can drive or type at the keyboard and we can add the
Sure.
stuff that we need here. Okay, awesome. The first thing we're going to do is, as you all may have noticed, we installed a program named Python 3 and pip 3. That's because that's Python version 3. There is indeed a version 2 of Python. No one uses it because it's old, but so much code was written in it that there are tons of Python 2 programs out there. And because it's been around for so long, for maintenance purposes and to avoid confusion, the sort of Python committee decided that they would let the name Python refer to Python version 2, and Python 3 is Python version 3. So in terms of how like the Python programming language gets named and modules and stuff, that's the naming convention. But for us, since we're using Python 3 all the time, this is a little annoying. So we're going to create an alias, which is very much like a nickname or a variable. So I don't have to type Python 3 all the time. So go ahead and type alias and then space. And then Python equals without any spaces. And then in single quotes, Python 3. Yep, that is perfect. And so once we save this file and open up a new terminal, every time we open up a new terminal, this file gets run. This is a bunch of command line commands. Like, Len, if you want to, go ahead on the next line, put echo space hello world with hello world in quotes. And everyone go ahead and do this too. And you can go ahead and delete this later. But just to emphasize that you'll see every single time you open up a new terminal or start a new shell session, you'll see your hello world message. So this is how you can customize your command line. So we're creating this alias that's going to be used every single time we start a new terminal. So we don't have to type Python 3 anymore. We can just type Python and it'll point to Python 3. And then go ahead and give me a new line below line 1. Let's make our other alias. Let's have the echo be at the very end of this file. And let's create another alias for pip. So alias space pip equal sign without any spaces. And then in single quotes, pip 3. Awesome. And go ahead and give me another line below line 2. Give me another empty line so we have a space. And now hit the pound sign, shift 3. And let's make a comment. And the comment is going to be, let's say, default Python virtual environment. Because we're going to set up the Python virtual environment here. And so this way, when you look at this 6 months from now, you'll remember what this was for. And you can just say like for assignments or something. And so this is how you make a comment in a shell script, which is what this is. And now give me a new line, and we're going to use that same command to activate the virtual environment. So source. And I'll just give it out to you so you can type it out. Yep, space, tilde /, which says navigate to my home directory, and then default /bin, bin, /activate. Yep, and go ahead and hit enter again. Just so there's an empty space. The more you all get experience with your editors, there's like a keyboard shortcut to like jump up and down to empty lines. And just the more code you write, the more this visual layout makes life easier. So I'm just going to kind of show you guys how to organize your code the right way from day one. Use empty lines like that to like separate different meaningful stuff. And go ahead and save this file. Now, go ahead and in the terminal, right next to where it says bash, there's that little plus symbol that will create a new shell session. just go ahead and click it to start a new one. Up and let's see. Click on the other one. Did this? Go ahead and save and quit the bash profile file.
Oh,
We might just have to restart VS Code, is what it might be.
Hmm.
Let's just restart VS Code real quick. And now what we should see, fingers crossed, when you open up VS Code or really any terminal, hello world should get printed and the command prompt should at the front in parentheses say default because that Python virtual environment has been turned on. And so all of you,
I'm gonna look.
I would say just quit and restart VS Code because I'm not 100%. I don't think we should need to, but sometimes I'm wrong. And you know, when in doubt, just quit and restart. And Len, when you get it up, if you can screen share, or if someone can confirm that it's working for them and that I didn't make a silly mistake, that would be a good starting point.
I closed the wrong terminal. My bad. Let me
You're all
let me
good.
get it back up.
Yeah. And is this working? Can I get like maybe a thumbs up for folks that this is working for?
What seems to be the issue?
Eric, Garrett, Mickey, is this working for you all? Or Erica, excuse me.
What are we supposed to be saying?
Yeah, we are supposed to be seeing. I'll just go ahead and share my screen.
So yeah, I got the same thing as Brandon, because I opened up the terminal on my desktop and like I see hello world, and then I opened it on VS Code and I don't see it.
Interesting.
Yeah, same thing. I can see it in the terminal, but not in VS Code.
Yeah, not in VS Code.
Oh, okay. I wonder, give me 1 sec here, folks, if I made a mistake. Maybe this needed to go into the bash RC file.
In my
Yeah, I don't see my actual terminal when I open it either. It's bash, so
in my config, I don't know if this is necessary, but at the end I put source like the bash RC. Maybe that has something to do with it.
Oh, that could be. I am a little rusty on this, and I'm not gonna lie, I'm doing a bit of Googling right now as well. And in fact, I'm just using Chat GPT.
Is it home/default?
Say that again?
Source space the $ home/default.
No, it's gotta be source space tilde. Let me see what I have here in my. Oh, you're so right. I'm so sorry, guys. I did get that absolutely wrong. Let me go ahead and just share what this should look like. I'm so sorry. My brain just got a little confused and the tilde does not work. Can everyone see my screen right now? Let me go ahead and share my screen. So because I'm on a Mac, the name of my file is .zshrc, but it's the same thing. Can everyone see this? It should say Python helper stuff, source $home, alias. Cool. And if you want to add that echo hello world. So I apologize. This is not tilde slash. We were talking about shell environment variables, and this is the environment variable that points to your home directory. So that was one mistake I made. And I think it should work for me with VS Code now. Can Can someone maybe tell me, did that change get it working in your VS Code terminal as well, or no?
Can you share the code again?
Yeah, absolutely. Give me just one moment here. Where is my VS Code window? So these lines should all be the same. The only difference is that $home.
Not here.
So you can verify that you
Yeah.
are in the right virtual environment in VS Code by doing echo $ virtual underscore env. Like it's another variable. You can verify that you're in it. It might not show like default like it would in the other terminal, but you can just verify it.
What was the command again, Connor?
Let me check again. It's an environment variable.
Echo $.
Yeah, so it's echo $. It's like all caps virtual underscore env. And I'll verify you're in default. If you don't see the default, that is.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, the default should be there. I wonder if this is a WSL2 or Linux thing. I wonder if it is a question of the bash profile. In fact, let's just bash profile not loading for VS Code WSL2 Linux.
I'm not on WSL2 when I was doing mine.
Right,
Just
right. You're right. So this is just
but I also found, I was looking at my documents. So what did you say? What earlier we had to edit? Oh.
I apologize. I think there's like probably a command I missed here for, I think step one is let's make sure VS Code is loading the bash profile. So I think that's the first problem to solve, and then we'll move on to the second. So I think the easiest thing to do, it looks like VS Code by default, maybe looking at bash RC instead of bash profile. So I do apologize. So I think the easiest thing to do is when starting in the login way. Is this sort of what you had, Connor, where you had like this command to like run the bash RC stuff in your bash profile?
Yeah, at the end I had a source bash RC. Let me check. Yeah. So at the end it's like source tilde backslash bash RC or dot dash RC. According to ChatGPT, it told me that sometimes it won't load. So you have to do that in your bash profile.
Yeah, I think this is VS Code working a little differently. So let me go ahead and copy and paste this thing. So this is a little fancier shell script stuff, but it's just an if-then statement saying to run the bash RC. This thing that I pasted in, please put it in the .bash underscore profile directory like you see here on the right. And does this line up with what you have in yours, Connor?
I just always call it without a conditional. I don't know if that's bad or not, but
It honestly doesn't make a big difference because all of us are always going to have both of these files existing on a practical level. And then just copy the stuff you had in the bash profile into the .bashrc file, which is what you see here on the right. Mikhail, yes, sir.
Yeah, what you just pasted in the messages that if, where should I put that?
Put that in the .bash underscore profile file. Brandon, yes, sir.
I have stuff in my bash RC file. Do I just put it at the bottom of it?
Yes. Like if you want to, you can just add like code, platoon stuff, just so you can keep track of what's what. You can add a comment. My apologies for the confusion on that. Once someone has made these changes to the bash profile and the bash RC, could you quit VS save and close the files and quit VS Code and reopen it and let me know if we're seeing like the hello world message and default Python virtual environment turned on?
You talking to me?
Just anyone, once you have this done, can someone just let me know if this is now working for you?
So the bash profile file, one that we have echo hello world in, we should put the if statement right above the echo hello world.
Yeah, that's fine. You can
And then-
eventually move all that stuff out of the bash profile, but it's not gonna hurt to have it there. It's okay if it's duplicated.
And then I open another VS Code now with bash RC.
It doesn't matter how many VS codes you open, just use VS Code to edit each of these files. If it's a little easier, I can use VS Code to do that. So I'm in VS Code. I'm in my home directory. I'm going to edit my bash RC. I'm going to type code again, and this maybe is the answer to your question, to edit the bash profile. And I now have, let me just shrink my terminal. And I now have these in two different tabs. And I'll just go ahead and do a split, which is one of your friends. So we can see both of these files. So you should just edit both of these files. When you're done, please save the files. Quit them. And let's see, in fact, if I open a new terminal, what happens. And
Oh yeah, I'm just trying to follow steps. So inside the bash RC, I should put everything that's in bash profile.
correct.
Just append it to the end so you don't mess up anything. Also, I noticed that I had to close out my VS Code instances. I had to close out all instances of it, and then when I
Yeah.
restarted it, I saw the hello world and the default thing, the default virtual environment, which is what you were supposed to see. So I think you have to close them all out.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised I didn't see that other hello world. Let me take a quick look at the we have one more bit after this, which is Postgres, which is a little funky, but otherwise we're in a good spot. How are we doing? Did this work for anyone, or oh, I've got some thumbs up. Okay. Awesome. Erica, if you wouldn't mind, maybe, do you want to maybe just share your screen and you can show the two files, and that can be a useful reference for folks? And Mikhail, how's it going for yourself? Because I know
Yeah,
you were
I'm
on
not,
one of the
I'm not
final steps
sure what
there.
I'm supposed to, what am I supposed to see? After I run this?
Got
After
it.
after I did what I'm supposed to do, what am I supposed to see?
Close out VS Code completely. Reopen
Yes,
VS Code. Open a terminal. In that terminal, you should see your hello world message. And at the very beginning of the command prompt, in parentheses default, showing that that default Python virtual environment has been activated.
And I'm using that, oh my ZSH, is that a issue? That the issue?
Say that again.
I'm using the oh my ZSH.
Oh, you are using a different shell. You're using ZSH.
Yeah.
Are you on are you on Windows with WSL2?
Yes.
Okay. I did not realize you were using ZSH instead of bash. I should have checked in with everyone on that. That does change things because with ZSH, it is not the .bash underscore profile file. It is not the .bash RC file. It is a file named .zshrc. And you just want to stick not the if statement, but all that other stuff in the bottom of the .zshrc file. I have ZSH. Most of the Macs do because it's on Macs by default now. There's like some differences between ZSH and Bash, but nothing critical. So, Mikhail, we can look at that one. If not,
So
at
so
the end of
just
the day
copy
today, tomorrow.
everything. So just copy everything that's in the bash profile, in the bash src inside the .zsh.
Yeah, and in fact, I can show you exactly what that would look like. Give me just a
Do
second.
you-
I'm doing it right now.
Do you
Perfect.
still need me to share or?
I'm good, Erica. Thank you though. Normally I love having people screen share. I think just in the interest of time, it's probably a little more easier for
I'm not-
Connor and myself.
I'm not getting the hello world printout when I open it up.
Joseph,
Yes.
and are you on Linux?
I'm on a Weasel Ubuntu.
Weasel Ubuntu. You know, folks, I apologize. We may have to. Oh, and why is VS Code freaking out on me? We may have to come back to this one. Because I want to make sure we cover Postgres. Are you sure you're using Bash as well, Joseph? If you type echo space $shell in all caps, like this, does it say Bash instead of ZSH? And Mikhail, just to show, I'll show my, so if you go to your home directory and then you open up ZSHRC, and my VS Code is being funny for a minute, so I'm just going to use Vim. You should have this stuff, these lines here. That if statement you don't need in the .zshrc, but these other ones. And Joseph, were you able to confirm that you're using Bash?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Joseph, I apologize. We will come back. Let me make a note. Who else was not able to get it set up? So I can make sure to follow up with you guys either after stand down today or tomorrow.
B.
Gary, awesome. Yep.
Mine also wasn't working.
Yeah, mine's still not working.
Yeah, I'm having a little issues with it.
Okay, so actually this may not be a robust solution. I apologize about this, folks. I think we will come back to this one and I may ask for some help. Mickey, I see you're about to head out. I think that is okay. That gives us just enough time to get into Postgres. Um, you know,
What I was gonna say about that is sometimes it works for mine and then sometimes it doesn't. It just seems inconsistent. So what you can do is you can just like open up VS Code and then just source the bash profile if you really want to see it.
yeah, I mean, then you have to do that every time you open a shell session is the only thing. Yeah, I apologize, guys. I think the Postgres we will have to come back to because we're going to start stand down soon and it's not realistic to get through this in 7 minutes. But we're not going to be using Postgres for at least like 2 weeks. So we will have plenty of time. I think we will just probably tackle Postgres tomorrow.
And I've asked one quick question. So I ended up, it worked for me, but it's when I put it in my bash RC, not my profile. And now it just works when I open up any terminal and also when I'm in VS Code. So is that what we changed to, was to the bash or .bash RC?
That is the change we made, yes. And
Okay.
Connor, actually, if you don't mind, why don't you screen share and share what your bash RC looks like? And again, thanks for being patient on this, folks. I apologize. We clearly need to update the docs on this one.
Just do this.
I was able to get mine to work also once I moved it to the bash RC file without the if statement and everything.
Yeah, like it was
Got it. Yeah, maybe that if statement was overkill.
I didn't use the if statement either. I just used the top line in the hello world.
Yeah, mine is not displaying how it should be.
Ooh.
Yeah, so this is really inconsistent. Sometimes it loads in like this, and then sometimes it loads in like that.
Okay.
What were you guys saying to do? Just add this at the very end, except for that, of course. Like you're saying to add that to the bash RC.
Yeah, I did. I added that at the very end.
Oh, so I removed the if statement and it works now.
Oh man, I'm so sorry, guys. I grabbed that from the internet, and that just goes the dangers of copying code because I'm not a shell script expert, but I've written shell scripts, and so I thought that was solid. So I'm really sorry about that. Please do remove the if statement. Connor, you probably want to replace the tilde/ with $home/. That was my bad as well. So $, and then in all caps home / default bin actions.
Like that?
Yes, sir.
Also,
everybody should do that.
I just literally copied and pasted into the bash RC, and then it works for VS Code now.
And will you do it one more time to make sure that it works with the $ home and I didn't just give terrible advice?
Yeah, it works.
Okay, awesome. Then, yeah, I would say if it's working with the tilde/, honestly, I would just say leave it in the spirit of if it's not broke, don't fix it.
Okay.
Yeah, technically the $ home should be a bit better. They both do the same thing. Like tilde, if you type cd space tilde, that is a shortcut to home. And the $ home should point to the same place. Okay, folks, awesome. And again, thank you so much for your patience with this. We got through almost everything we needed. I think we're gonna do stand down in 3 minutes. So the only thing we have left to cover is Postgres. I will find time for us. We might just have to return from lunch a little early, but we will knock out installing Postgres this week. And again, we're not doing anything with Postgres for the next, like, at least the next 3 weeks. So you guys have all the critical stuff. Let's take a break because we're going to come back for the stand down, but we'll have a little time because you can fill out the feedback form. Thank you all very much. Gary, I'll follow up with you about getting set up. And now we should have everything set up so that now you will always be in WSL2 with all the right terminals, and there's a Python virtual environment that we can use for all the assignments, and that's the critical piece for the next couple of weeks. So thank you. Let's leave. Take just stretch for a minute because we're going to kick off our all class stand down at 5 on the hour. So I apologize that it's run long, but then we'll get into stand down and we'll wrap for the day. So thank you very much, everyone, and I'll see you in just a minute and stand down in the main room.
Yeah.
Just quick question.
Yeah.
Because I need to leave like maybe 5 minutes, 5 minutes earlier to go to daycare and be traffic. Otherwise, they will kick my child out.
Yeah, I forgot that we were talking about that. Go for it, Erica. We'll chat more. We'll figure out the long-term fix later so you can still see code demos and stuff. Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
no, yeah, but I can stay here till like 5:20. I just need to afterwards just go real quick.
Honestly, I would just say leave now. Just you know, Francisco, is there anything mission critical that we're gonna report and stand down?
Negative. All is good.
Yeah, go for it, Erica.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for checking. All right, and did you come here to grab us?
What?
Oh no, Francisco. Did you come here to grab us?
Yeah, I came here. I just want to make sure it was alive. We all good? Did we make
We're
it?
alive. We made it. We didn't hit the Postgres. That's the one thing that I'm gonna follow up with them, but we got everything else.
Damn. Again?
I know. I know. I'm on the struggle bus, but you all, everyone here was a hero, and I very much appreciate it. Let's head back into the main room for stand down. Erica, see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of the evening.
All right. Have a good one, everyone. Whoa, who's recording still?